Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to go over to the Netherlands once again and have a taste of a beer from what I believe is the very first Dutch craft brewery that ever opened, and please correct me on that if I am wrong, but we are going to go to Brouwerij, who are from Amsterdam, and have a taste of their IJndejaars beer, which is their Christmas seasonal, and it's described as being a Belgian strong dark ale. And if you go on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate and have a look at this brewery, have a look at their ratings, they are very, very good. So I'm sure whatever you try from this brewery, you will not be disappointed with it. Those two websites very rarely go wrong on their beer. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the company, just a minute or two, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that hopefully I can add from Brouwerij in the fairly near future. And I must apologise before I do the history part if my Dutch pronunciation isn't quite correct. Sometimes it's very, very difficult just to read some of the kind of Dutch pronunciations and stuff like that, so apologies in advance if it's not right. But anyway, Brouwerij was founded in Amsterdam back in 1985 by Casper Petersen, who was the bassist of Dutch band Drukwerk. And the band often visited Belgium on their tours, and Casper really fell in love with the various different beer styles in Belgium, and he was taken aback by the fact that every single Belgian village, if you like, seemed to have their own brewery. And at this time it was only lager beer that was really widely available in the Netherlands, but because of this, Casper decided that he wanted to start his own brewery. And it's for this reason, and the fact that Casper was inspired by the Belgian beer scene, that most of the beers that you get from Brouwerij are actually Belgian style beers. But the Dutch beers are really excellent. They're kind of overshadowed by Belgian beer just because of how well it's known, but trust my word on that, the beers that I've reviewed for you on this channel from the Netherlands are all excellent, so do give them a try. But anyway, the brewery was founded in an old bathhouse called Funen next to the De Goejaar windmill in eastern Amsterdam, and Casper owned the brewery for its first 20 years before he sold it to Bart Obertop and Patrick Hendrikse, who had a long history of owning various beer bars in and around Amsterdam. So two very worthy owners took a hold of the brewery after the first owner. But the demand for their beer grew quite extensively, and they upgraded to a fairly new facility quite soon after that, and it's very close to the original bathhouse, which is the main brew pub for the brewery today, and it's meant to be a very, very nice venue. So if you do find yourself in Amsterdam, definitely go and check it out. It's really quite well known. But the main symbol for this brewery, if you like, the brewery is named after the Ey water body, which runs very close to where the brewery is, and they're known for having the ostrich, the egg and the distant windmill on their labels. But because this guy is a seasonal beer, the label is quite different, but they all have this kind of diamond shape label, and they all have the ostrich, the windmill and the egg on it, so that's how you can recognise their beers. But anyway, that's a kind of brief history of the brewery for you. To tell you about the other beers you can get from these guys, in their main range they have the Columbus, the Fink, the Awit, the IPA, the Zata, the Strui and the Notte, and in their seasonal range they have the Eibok, Pas A and IJndejaars, which is this guy here, the winter seasonal. So anyway, as I told you at the start of this beer review, this guy is the winter seasonal beer. It's described as being a 9% Belgian strong ale. So just to read the actual commercial description of this for you, it says, one of our flagship beers, slightly different in flavour every year. A splendid maroon coloured beer with fine aromas of spiced fruit, orange peel and well roasted malt to delight the nose. The flavour is a spicy balance of caramel, citrus and slightly bitter hops to restore that warm feeling during the dark days of winter. If stored in a cool, dark place, IJndejaars will keep for many years. And the note on this beer is that until 2005 it was called IJndejaars, but from 2006 until 2008 it was called Turbok, and in 2009 they started using the old name IJndejaars again. So the Turbok beer from Brouwerij is the same beer. But some of you might actually have that still cellared away, because as they say, it can last for many years. But let me just bring up the camera, let you have a little quick look at the artwork before we get on to tasting this beer. So as you can see, as I said, it is a kind of diamond shape that they put on the labels of these beer, and you can see the ostrich just enjoying a little bit of snow and eating some hay or something like that there. But it does say, I'm not sure about what exactly it says in Dutch there, so maybe somebody in the comments section can translate that for me. I know German and I know French, but not really Dutch yet, so maybe that's something I'll learn in the thing that says, I think it means all the good times come in Christmas or something like that, or at Yule, maybe that's the right way to translate. But as you can see, it's just a plain bottle cap on this one. But yeah, it's presented very nicely. As I said, a 9% dark Belgian strong ale. So without further ado, let's get a look at it. It says Amsterdam's Christmas beer as well, and unpasteurised and unfiltered. So without further ado, let's get this guy open and we will get on with the tasting here. Very excited to try this guy. So as you can see, a nice slightly smoky opening on this one. As we pull it out, you get a nice little bit of bubble, just very keen to escape the bottle. You can actually really smell the the spicy character coming off this beer as you pour it. But yeah, it looks very, very nice as we bring it out and into the glass. So yeah, as you can see, you really can smell that spice actually. You can really smell that kind of slightly gingery and nutmeggy note coming out of the bottle there. Really quite interesting. But let's just bring the light up and have a proper look at the colour of this one. As you can maybe see with that level of light, it's a nice sort of dark mahogany colour beer, this one. There's two fingers of a kind of slightly bumpy but mainly frothy kind of cream coloured head there. It's not tan really, but you can see a good bit of sediment in the bottom of the bottle there. I've had this beer in the fridge for maybe 2 or 3 days, I think it is now, just to make sure it's properly cool. But it came out about an hour ago just to let it heat up a wee bit, but it looks really, really nice. But yeah, as you can see, not hazy in the slightest. If I put my fingers behind it, not transparent. I should have said it is hazy, not transparent in the slightest, but it looks very, very nice, and a lot of sediment. Quite a big bit of sediment actually just going round there. Carbonation is quite visible as well. There's a lot of bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head, but I think it's fair to describe this beer as being a very kind of sort of mahogany, maybe slightly chestnut colour, but more of a kind of lighter reddish mahogany. It looks very, very nice. So let's have a look at the aroma on this guy. So yeah, if you just stand it still and breathe it in, or take it in, you can really smell the kind of grassy and citrusy hops coming off this one. But if you sugar it up a little bit more, then you start to get more of a yeasty character coming out of it. Slightly toasted. There's a little bit of caramel in there too, but there's a nice sort of spice character to it. It's a sort of nutmeggy and maybe slightly gingery spice. You can maybe even get a little bit of clove out of it, but there's a definite sort of typical Belgian-y, bready, yeasty sweetness coming out of this one. A nice kind of clovey spice, nutmeggy, maybe even slightly ginger, but I think ginger's maybe pushing it a little bit. It's more of a nutmeggy and slightly clovey spice that's coming out of it. But a big, typical sort of Belgian-y, yeasty aroma coming off this one. I shouldn't say Belgian-y because it is a Dutch beer, but it does at the same time smell quite similar to a Belgian beer. But there is a big bit of dark and slightly roasted caramel in there. And you can pick up a little bit of the dark fruit coming out of this guy too, so the sort of plums, raisins and figs. I want to say there's a bit of both in there. There is some of the more mild figgy notes, but you do have some of the sharpness that you would expect from plums and raisins and stuff. But you can pick up a little bit of orange just coming out of that too. Quite sharp orange actually, I would say, but there is a definite kind of grassy and slightly aromatic-y hop coming out of that. You just get the sort of smoothness of the grass hop too. So there's a nice big nose on this guy, and just make sure that you do give it a try and pick it out, because it's quite a complex beer from what I gather, and it has very good ratings. So without further ado, let's have a taste of the IJndejaars from Brouwerij in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Slanje. Now that's really interesting. It's a very, very well blended flavour. Just on first taste, there's a lot of stuff going on in this beer, so you just need to pay attention and get what flavours you're picking up. Yeah, so there's a nice big yeasty flavour in this one. You definitely are getting a little bit of that kind of clovey spice in there on top of the yeast and bread. The yeast and bread just blankets the tongue, but you get a nice, slightly clovey and spicy feel that comes on top of that. You can definitely pick up just a little teeny bit of nutmeg, but it is a little bit of a kind of slightly gingery and maybe slightly coriander spice that's coming out of this one. Yeah, there really is a definite kind of spice to this. It's really quite interesting, and you can, when you actually think about what the commercial description says, this kind of spicy yeasty character, which is most likely to be the clove in this guy mixing with the yeast, that actually does mix well with the kind of citrusy hop elements that come out in this beer too. So yeah, you've got that typical Belgian yeast sweetness to this beer. That blankets the tongue with a bit of breadiness, but on top of that you have a little bit of clove spice just in there, maybe slightly nutmeggy flavours too, and it could even be a little bit of ginger or coriander or something like that. I think it's not quite a ginger flavour, if that makes sense, but you can see why. You can smell that in the aroma. You get a nutmeggy sort of Christmassy spice, gingery flavour out of this one. It just goes on top of that little bready and yeasty blanket in there. There is a definite little bit of caramel in here too. You can pick that up. Yeah, definite little bit of kind of dark, very dark caramel that just goes right down the middle of the tongue there. But around the edges, you actually are getting quite a kind of mildish grassy hop, but it's a kind of, it's slightly aromatic just at the back sides of the tongue there, but it's mainly a grassy hop, and there is just a little bit of kind of a dark orangey citrus in there, but I think it's more of a sharper kind of lemony citrus is coming out too, so it's a definite, the hoppy character of this beer is really interesting, as is the malty yeasty character that blankets the middle of the tongue. So you've got a lot going on in this beer, so just take a little bit of time and think about all the flavours that are going on in this beer, because it really is quite complex. But yeah, as I say, the main components of the flavour, it really is a nice sweet bready yeast that's in the middle there. There's a little bit of caramel on top of it, but it has a really nice kind of slightly clovey, nutmeggy, maybe even slightly ginger spice that just mixes in with that. And around the edges of the tongue you're getting a kind of grassy hop in there with a definite citrus presence. It's got a nice juicy, slightly orangey feel, but there is a bit of sharper lemony citrus in there too. But as you move into the aftertaste a bit more, you can get a little bit of darker fruit in there, some kind of sharper plums, and I think that's maybe mixing with what I'm perceiving as a quite sharp lemony citrus flavour in there. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this beer, so just take a little bit of time, like I said, and try and get used to all the things that are going on in this beer. But it's really, really nice. A little bit of grassy and aromatic hop, and it does become a little bit drier around the edges of the tongue as you go through the beer. And in the aftertaste as well, that's really, I think, when you're getting a bit more of the kind of sharper plums and dark fruit there, but there's a kind of lingering dryness around the edge of the tongue in the aftertaste too. But in terms of the mouthfeel, this guy, I'd say it definitely is full-bodied. The carbonation is nicely done. It gives the beer a very nice, smooth, quite an oily mouthfeel actually. It feels very full, and that helps build the impression of quite a full-bodied beer. There is a good bit of alcohol warmth in this one that you can feel just down here, and it does have that typical thing with it. It is a kind of boozy Belgian ale, if that makes sense, but it's slightly oily, but it's got a nice spicy character, as I say, that just blankets the tongue, but it's quite dry around the edges, and that's where, as I say, you're getting the aromatic flavours, the slightly grassy element, and a little bit of orangey citrus there. But it's got a nice kind of full and oily feel that helps bring out the dark fruits and that caramel and spicy malt base in there. So the mouthfeel of it is just perfect. So overall, it's a really quite interesting beer, and it has the nice Christmas spices that we sometimes get in some of the Scottish Christmas beers over here, mixed with this really big and heavy Belgian beer. So to me, it's a very, very interesting beer that's definitely worth trying if you can come across. As I say, it is a Christmas seasonal, so you might have a little bit of difficulty getting it, and plus the fact it is a Dutch beer, so it's actually quite hard to get Dutch beer outside of the Netherlands, which is a bit of a shame, because as I said, they are very, very good beers. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. As I say, Brouwerij are really worth checking out. They've got very good ratings on Rate Beer and BeerAdvocate.com from this beer. I really can see why. It's a beautiful, beautiful beer, and if you're into your Belgian style beer, then this is one you really want to try. And as I say, Dutch beer is awesome, so do give it a go. But please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it before. I always like seeing them, and I thank you again for watching my beer reviews, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I do have a few more Dutch beers to review for you in the fairly near future, so stay tuned for that. But slàinte for now. Cheers.